In this video, I'm going to talk to you guys about how I train in isolation and go into a little bit more detail. I kind of roughly skimmed over it in my Pyramid of Progress video. Kind of a funny title, I just had to come up with something, right? So this is a rough layout of how I would isolate certain skills that go into low light clearing. And so this would be low light clearing with a weapon mounted light or even a handheld light. It's so general that that could really be the case. And the principles are the same, or at least the some of the rules that you typically want to follow are the same. So I know a lot of people may think, well, if you want to get good at something, then just do it. I've said that a lot myself, but this is not like doing a lizard walk or doing push-ups. This is doing something that actually requires you to react to stimuli and to follow a certain set of rules where you're actually able to deceive and, work against the human brain, as it were, because if you want to own the night, you have to follow a certain set of rules in order to trick the opposition's brain. So, anyways, it's not really all that James Bondy, but you know what I mean. So this isn't in any particular order. You can set it up however you wish. So first one would be illumination, and this is just your light discipline skills. This is really your James Bond part right here. So this is where you're actually following the rule that you only illuminate when you are standing still, so you do not telegraph your direction of travel or where you're going. Feel free to scan a room, but your feet are planted and you do not give momentum and then turn off the light. So you really practice scanning, turning off, and then moving. So you work on your illumination skills. And if you're using a handheld, you're going to probably spend a little bit more time on this because you've got different things you can do. Neck index, you can do the syringe technique, you can do a lot of different like modified Harry's techniques and stuff like that. So there's a lot of different like positions and light discipline skills that you can do to manipulate light in order to illuminate and get a better picture of what's going on in the room and make identification with a threat or whatever is in the room. So the next thing is fingers, hands, and trigger. Now what that means is this is going back to the foundation of the pyramid. So fingers, I like to tell people like when they're shooting, so I'm going to tell you what order to squeeze your fingers in. And once I tell you to squeeze that finger, I mean squeeze it and hold it throughout the entire sequence and consciously do it. So tell yourself, pinky, ring, middle, hands, and so squeeze your hands together like you're trying to squash the sides and also squash the front and back of the pistol. So pinky, ring, middle, hands, pull the trigger without moving the gun. And then you just practice that. That would be your foundational isolation. This would probably be the first thing I would do, and it's something that I do almost daily. So the next one is presentation, illumination, and movement. So this is just kind of putting things together, but giving yourself kind of a target. So you get into like a dark room or whatever, and you would actually practice moving around the room in the dark and then illuminating an area and then presenting and then following through with this skill that you isolated. So it's still technically an isolation movement. You're just combining these two disciplines, really. So, however you would want to hold the gun in a manner that retains it. I don't recommend offering your gun wherever you go unless you actually have room. If you don't have room, retention. But, I'm not here to give you advice on that. So, anyways, the next part is the clearing part. Now, this is kind of two parts. So, the first part is you might want to practice your pine. Make sure that your eyes and your shoulder are not, are not out of line, and that you're not putting your foot out. You shouldn't be able to look down and look directly down and see your foot. Your foot should be more in. So you're trying to offer as little visibility to the threat as possible. So when you're going in, you want to tuck that elbow and Throw it in and just practice that. And if you have a video camera, then practice that. Practice pieing and illuminating, and just kind of combine this with a couple of the other things you were working on, if you wish. And you can also then slowly integrate all of this together. So, you know, that's how I train in isolation. It's pretty simple. And I think some people overthink it. They just want to dive right into the cool stuff like, oh, well, I'm going to clear my house. I want to make sure I'm really good at, like, the small stuff. I want to make sure when it comes time to actually pulling the trigger, I'm actually going to hit what I intend to hit. And the way I do that is I isolate that skill and I get my body so used to it that it becomes second nature. And the only way you're going to do that is by practicing that one kick, as Bruce Lee said, 1,000,000 times. Same thing with everything else. You practice it in isolation. That way you can focus on it, that your brain can actually have a specific class where it is specifically learning that and getting very intimate with that knowledge that you were trying to shove down your brain's throat as far as like memory is concerned. So this is it. Yeah, I'm just using the way the brain learns to my advantage for honing skills. So, I mean, it's not just clearing with a light or clearing with a pistol. You can extend this to anything you're doing. Whether you're trying to get familiar with it with a new firearm, if you're trying to get used to a new accessory, new sights, anything. You can conduct training in isolation in order to get better at those little things. If you've got a red dot and you've never had a red dot before, you can train in isolation basically the same way. You start with finger, hands, trigger, and then you go on to presentation and movement and stuff like that. Try to keep that dot nice and still, but you're not pulling the trigger. You're just doing what I call target tracking, where you just aim and you hold it on the target the whole time. No matter where you're moving, or what position, or what hand you're actually holding it in. You're not losing track of that target. So there's ways to train in isolation, and it doesn't take too much creativity to figure it out. It's pretty much anything you do, you can break it down into smaller chunks and smaller movements and stuff like that that really could use a little bit more dexterity. So, yeah. It is what it is, but that's the way that I train in isolation. At least that's one of the ways. I can go into a little bit more detail if you wish. But anyways, I appreciate you guys watching. Don't forget to leave a comment below, and you guys have a good one.